Hello, my name's Sheila and I'm a member of Milton Keynes Fawcett Group, and I'm very excited to be part of this Voices of Women Milton Keynes event. So I have donated to international agencies in various ways over the years, and I thought it might be quite interesting to look at how the aid agencies view women's voices and their life experiences, and how they may use them to shape what they do on the ground. And I'd like to share with you what I found out. So this is me in my kitchen. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the beginning. Yeah, that's it. This is me in my kitchen in 1979. I had written a letter to the Northampton Chronicle and Echo about fundraising for Action in Distress, which later became Action Aid. And I've included an extract from that letter, which suggests that I rather bought into what I think was quite a common view of aid at the time, i.e. it was paternalistic. It was all about poor people who could be helped through the wisdom and largesse of those who have more. And it's about needy children being done to, and the work that went on in various countries in what we called the Third World was carried out through outsiders from wealthier countries or local institutions that had won the contract. And the voices of shaping and challenging from the ordinary citizens were probably largely non-existent. So there's the two children we were sponsoring. And as you can see in my letter, I put emphasis on the fact that I think the money was being put to good use because it provided at least one good meal a day and free education. So if we fast forward, I think this picture shows a group of women who look as if they definitely have something to say and the means to be heard, and from their faces, the expectation that they will be listened to. It seems there may have been a sea change in thinking around aid. This is a list of statistics that Oxfam have on their website. And it does suggest that women's status and situation across the world is very far from equal or fair or safe. The figures are truly shocking and have echoes in every country. So it talks about the small number of women in world's parliaments and as mayors, how much women are paid less than men for comparable work, how 2/3 of illiterate adults are women, and how in 153 countries there are laws which discriminate against women economically, including 18 countries where husbands can legally prevent their wives from working. And worldwide, 1 in 3 women and girls will experience violence or abuse in their lifetime. So does it matter? Well, of course it does, and not just morally. It's clear from much research that economically active, healthy, knowledgeable and confident females mean that families are healthier across the generations. Their families are economically more stable and secure, and communities are often tangibly safer and more at peace with each other. Everyone benefits from gender equality. This quote kind of says it all, really. It's from Save the Children, who believe that when girls are educated, empowered, healthy and free from violence and discrimination, their communities are more prosperous and stable. Investing in gender equality is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And it's really not surprising that that quote is from Save the Children when you when you know that it was the gloriously named Eglantine Jebb who set up Save the Children. And I would recommend this biography of her. So yes, there she is, the woman who saved children. She led a great team of people to set up Save the Children. And she also, in 1923, drafted a declaration of the rights of the child, which she took to the League of Nations. And that became the foundation of a movement which resulted in the UN Convention of the Rights of a Child. Now, obviously, not just a bedrock of all the work the Save the Children do, but also a commitment signed up to by all the countries that are members of the United Nations. So under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, there is an assertion that children and young people have the right to freely express their views. And there is an obligation to listen to those views and to facilitate children's participation in all matters affecting them. Which is great. How does it work out on the ground? Well, here are some slides about World Vision. World Vision being an agency with a presence around the world and a base in and a long association with Milton Keynes. It still works a lot through sponsorship, but much of its funds is used to facilitate young people finding and using their voices, as well actually as women. So here's Dola from Bangladesh on the day she visited the UN on the Day of the Child in 2019, in order to present the work that her Child Forum in Bangladesh had done, which had stopped over 600 child marriages in the previous 2 years. And here's Fatima in Syria, very different circumstances, where her mother chose to marry her off at the age of 14. Note, to somebody who could provide for her and her family. At the age of 17, she became a mother, and now she's set up a Facebook page where she raises awareness among her friends about child marriage. And through her social media, she tries to support as many children as possible who are the victims of child marriage. So Fatima may have had her choices and opportunities limited by a mother who was probably had only her good at heart, wanting her to be provided for because she could not provide for herself. But Fatima is trying to raise awareness and support others so that they may have more choices. And I also want to share with you Serafina's story. Serafina is in Ghana.
The Child Parliament Club of my school finds issues of violence against children, and then we look forward to how to solve them. As the Speaker of the Parliament, I mobilize my fellow children to move into the community to sensitize parents, community members, and other people on violence against children. In the northern region where I hail from, child marriage happens to 1 in 3 girls. As a group in the club, we organize soccer clinics, girls' soccer clinics, and girls' soccer clinics because in our part of the world, seeing girls play soccer is very rare. So the soccer clinic attracted a lot of people to the field ground, in which in the process of the soccer, we educate the audience around on the dangers of violence against children. Indeed, as children, we must rise up to demand for what is rightly ours before adults will ensure that all forms of violence against children is brought to an end. Thank you.
Oxfam 2 is very clear about the paradigm in which they believe change and advancement can happen, placing responsibility on women, particularly Black and women of colour, to lead and shape solutions. And they say that they centre the experience and voices of women, women's rights and feminist organisation, because they play an essential role in promoting gender equality and realising women's right to dismantle the inequalities that shape the experiences of all women and men around the world. And what about ActionAid, where we started 45 years ago? Well, I'll let the women talk for themselves.
Life is not easy for women and girls in Kenya. From the moment they are born, girls face many forms of violence. In fact, 1 in every 3 girls in Kenya experiences sexual violence in her childhood. We're funding local women's groups so they can challenge this violence every day. In their homes, in their schools, and throughout their communities. No girl should have to live in fear. Women are standing together and saying,
"Not this girl, not any girl."
ActionAid Combat Squads are community-based anti-violence teams who work with women and men to stop violence. They support women to claim their rights and access justice for the violence perpetrated against them. Vida is a survivor and works for the Combat Squad in her community. She tells me how it's changed her life and that of women within the community.
Combat like commander bachibe kapo importaba ne bada kumbombe ne banna mande bayala atane po una banga ti yele ku edo chedo kumban wulule una na do yele tibinka esun ako nte na mpo a combat po apoba memgba po peleyan ti yon termant zemin ayel ti yele kadoza bachibe.
Marciana is a teacher in the local school and part of Combat.
Oh, there is a lot of changes. When men used to beat their wife, every night you'll be hearing crying, but now you will never hear anything because of several sensitization for the men that if you beat your woman, there is a place they will send you to. So now they have reduced. They also know that women too, they're having rights.
She said before ActionAid, she couldn't find her voice. It was amazing to hear her full of hope for the future of women and girls. ActionAid has girls' clubs in schools. Through plays and songs, girls learn about their rights and the importance of staying in school. As my time in Ghana came to a close, I was inspired to meet the passionate activists from the Young Urban Women's Movement. Fearless young women who are joining their voices to campaign and advocate for women's access to justice, work, and a future with choice. Life is hard for the women I met in Ghana, but I was able to see hope.
And we started with a picture of me 45 years ago, and the pictures I then had of the children we were sponsoring. But I wanted to share with you as I close the 3 recent pictures. So the one on the right is of a young woman with her learning mentor, with her motivator, as she's called. And her motivator is there to help her realise all her talents and all the opportunities, and to support her with her aspirations. And the young woman is the middle, Hemlata. Hemlata is sitting there showing off, very proud, all of her school resources. Her parents have made space for her to make sure she can study in peace and quiet, and she aspires to become a doctor. And the family on the left-hand side of your screen are a family who were featured in a recent report that I received from ActionAid. And Mum at the back there, she says, "When I conceived for the 5th time, my husband contacted the village health worker about a sex detection test and doing away with the fetus if it was a girl. But I was very bold and I refused to have the test. And this was because I had been attending women's groups meetings. And I learned that beside going to private hospitals for sex selection tests and terminations, They were also subjected to having herbs placed in the uterus to get rid of a girl child. I learned that there is a law against this practice and that we should fight against it and bring those responsible to justice. I gave birth to my 5th daughter 2.5 years ago. My husband and family were very unhappy with me for giving birth to another girl. In fact, my husband was very angry, but gradually his mindset started to change. This was thanks to meeting with the women's group, who talked with my husband about discrimination against women in society. And our eldest daughter started getting good marks at school, and the school management publicly praised us and said how proud we should be of our studious daughter. And this made my husband realise that daughters are just as good as sons. So with the support of the women's group, I attend public meetings and I interact with villagers to share my experience and teach men and women about the dangers of gender selection. I think there is much to learn from the approach of the agencies. The structural issues are the same across the world, whether you're talking about women as victims of abuse and sexual violence, their lack of education and economic potential not being realised, or the fact that despite forming over 50% of the population, women's presence is far too small in places where decisions for everyone are made. Yeah, you look across Milton Keynes and the UK, and we see that pattern repeated. And the COVID pandemic has exacerbated gender inequalities. So what I learned from considering this work of the international agencies is that supporting women to get together, share their experiences and organise makes a huge difference, often with excellent long-term results. I reckon that's what we need to do more of in Milton Keynes. The aid agencies recognise that long-term positive change comes from people feeling empowered, and summing up that you do things with people, not for or to them. It's good old community development, and it is not happening to the extent it needs to in communities across Milton Keynes. The Milton Keynes Women's Partnership can help to change that, and I look forward to working with them over the coming years. Thank you.